People have been talking about the possibility of the Chinese Communist Party using military force to take over Taiwan. Apparently, the threat from China is more pressing than leaders in America's capital seem to realize. On July 9th, the U.S. military's top intelligence officer for the Asia-Pacific, Rear Admiral Mike Stuttman, publicly delivered an urgent message.
So we would say the danger is clear and present already.
So what exactly is the CCP doing to prepare for war, and what have the Americans done in anticipation of that? Hello, welcome to my show. I'm Lei. Before I begin, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to my channel, and if you want to be on my email list, please go to my website, leisrealtalk.com, and subscribe there. One big question that looms over many people's heads is, will the CCP attack Taiwan? Since the CCP's centennial anniversary, Xi Jinping has been doing everything he can to consolidate power. The first thing he has done is clamp down on private enterprises. Since August, the state-controlled media has reprimanded the private sector at a speed of one industry per day. On August the 2nd, the official network CCTV took action to crack down on fan culture. Shares of entertainment and online video companies fell. And on August the 6th, People's Daily published an article stating, to rectify the bad fan culture, website platforms must strengthen supervision. The market value of video giant Kuaishou dropped over $1 billion. On August the 3rd, the Economic Information Daily called online gaming spiritual opium. Tencent, NetEase, and Bilibili saw their stock prices decline, and online game company China Mobile Games saw a decline of more than 20%. On August the 4th and 5th, various state media outlets published articles cautioning people against alcohol, e-cigarettes, and baby formula. Even the red-hot chip industry did not escape the storm. On August the 7th, CCTV Finance had a program stating that regulators should investigate companies that engage in chip speculation. The next day, the prices of Chinese chip companies fell. So the big tech, education, training, entertainment, gaming, liquor, dairy, and semiconductor industry have all been affected. And the word is out that food, drug, and health services are next on the list. But what is Xi Jinping trying to accomplish by taking down his domestic industries? You must know by now that communist leaders think differently than the free world. In anticipation of a war, he has two top priorities. First is to maintain absolute control over people's loyalty, and second is to keep China on a communist course with an iron fist. He knows that a war over Taiwan is essentially a battle between two social systems and two ideologies. In Xi Jinping's mind, money and business interests weaken people's loyalty, and he is concerned that the wealthy and powerful private enterprises will pose the same threat to his regime that the Russian oligarchs posed to Putin's years ago. He's also taking measures to ensure people don't stray. An announcement was made this month on August the 10th that the Ministry of Culture and Tourism would establish a government-sanctioned karaoke song repertoire. The purpose is to promote the core socialist values. This regulation would take effect on October the 1st. At that time, songs played in entertainment venues throughout China would be strictly prohibited from containing contents that endanger national unity, incite national hatred, and violate national religious policy. Furthermore, Shanghai is the first city to announce the removal of English as a subject required for tests in primary schools. Also on August the 10th, Beijing declared that primary and secondary schools are strictly prohibited from using foreign textbooks, and no tutorial materials can replace the textbooks issued by the authorities. Moreover, starting from the new semester in September, all primary and secondary schools will add a new compulsory course, the Xi Jinping thought. Also in early August, in the name of public safety during the pandemic, the regime announced that it would stop issuing passports to Chinese citizens. In fact, the pandemic may just be a convenient excuse for lockdown and isolation. Getting a passport to leave China has already become almost impossible. According to official data, the number of passports issued during the first half of 2021 is only 2% of 2019, the year before the pandemic. According to Forbes magazine, the Chinese government and companies imported record volumes of crude oil, copper, iron ore, and coal in 2020. They also imported a record amount of corn, wheat, and soybeans. Even though the Chinese population decreased in 2021, according to the CCP's custom data, grain and flour imports grew 190% during the 5 months from January to May, compared with the same period last year. Most analysts have spoken of China's binge buying of commodities as being a power play, domestic economic rebound, and so on. They've ignored the fact that the buying spree may be in preparation for a period of isolation from the world in a time of war. Until recently, Western countries have long been ignorant of the CCP's expansion in the South China Sea and Southeast Asia, an important international shipping route. If the CCP makes the South China Sea its territorial waters, the West will lose an important maritime channel. Recently, high-level American officials have frequently visited Southeast Asian countries. In May and June, Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman visited Indonesia, Cambodia, and Thailand. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visited Vietnam and the Philippines. And Vice President Kamala Harris will visit Singapore and Vietnam in August. Having the region's largest economy, Indonesia announced that it entered a new era of bilateral relations with the United States when its foreign minister, Retno Marsudi, visited Washington in early August. During Marsudi's visit to Washington, the two countries were holding the largest ever joint military training in Indonesia. On August 10th, the U.S. military announced the largest ever Southeast Asia cooperation and training exercise in Singapore. In addition to the United States' Western allies, participating Asian countries are Bangladesh, Brunei, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Maldives, Philippines, South Korea, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Thailand, East Timor, and Vietnam. However, according to Admiral Studman, these efforts are far from enough.
I'm wondering in Washington how many folks are truly persuaded by the warning which the intelligence community has already provided regarding the dangers that exist within this decade, soon now, with regard to the nature of the Chinese threat and how it manifests and what to do about it.
In recent years, the Chinese Navy has been engaged in a naval buildup, the likes of which have not been seen since the 1980s, according to a Lowy Institute report. The U.S. Department of Defense recently assessed that China's Navy is now the largest navy in the world in terms of the sheer number of ships. Although the CCP has built unprecedented military hardware, given its corrupt nature, its biggest enemy may come from within. The South China Morning Post disclosed an important piece of information on August the 8th in an article titled Wolf versus Panda. The article mentioned that the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, complained to Xi Jinping about the foreign ministry's hawkish diplomats, and that the military would not pay the bill for their irresponsible remarks. The article also said that the hawkish diplomats criticized the military guys as being too soft and weak when dealing with the United States. This is very interesting because it seems that Xi's military doesn't want to fight as much as his diplomats. And Xi really does have a problem if his diplomats are the wolves and the military is the panda. The South China Morning Post is a media outlet controlled by Xi's political enemy, so I think the information revealed here is perhaps true, and meant to intentionally weaken Xi Jinping. Click here to watch the 2 previous videos I made on the subject, one from the perspective of CCP's internal political struggle and the other from the perspective of its foreign policies. That's all for today. I'll see you next time.